Welcome to Preeminent Test Prep. So today's video is going to be answer explanations for SAT Practice Test 1, the reading section. So I'm going to take you through each passage. I will read off the passage and then I will get into the answer explanations for the passage. I'll get into why they are correct and I'll share a few tips, tricks, and strategies for the SAT reading section along the way. So I'll be taking these as an approach of a walkthrough. So basically I'll go through, kind of show you what I'm looking for, show you how I find the right answer, why the right answers are correct, and why the wrong answers are incorrect. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with passage 1. Alright, so passage 1. Questions 1 through 10 are based on the following passage. This passage is from Rhodea, Manitoba, The Strangeness of Beauty, 1999 by Rhodea, Manitoba. The setting is Japan in 1920. She and her daughter Naomi are members of the House of Fuji, a noble family. Akira came directly, breaking all tradition. Was that it? Had he followed form? Had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between? Would she have been more receptive? He came on a winter's eve. He pounded on the door while a cold rain beat on the shuttered veranda. So at first she thought him only the wind. The maid knew better. She heard her soft scuttling footsteps, the creak of the door. Then the maid brought a calling card to the drawing room for Chi. She was reluctant to go to her guest. Perhaps she was feeling too cozy. She and Naomi were reading at a low tabletop set atop a charcoal brazier. A thick quilt spread over the sides of the table so their legs were tucked inside with the heat. Who is it at this hour, in this weather? She questioned as she picked the name card off the maid's lacquer tray. Shinoda Akira, Kobe Dental College, she read. Naomi recognized the name. She heard a soft intake of air. I think you should go, said Naomi. Akira was waiting in the entry. He was in his early 20s, slim and serious, wearing the black military-style uniform of a student. As he bowed, his hands hanging straight down, a black cap in one, a yellow oil paper umbrella in the other, she glanced beyond him. In the glistening surface of the courtyard's rain-drenched paving stones, she saw his reflection like a dark double. Madame, said Akira, forgive my disruption, but I come with a matter of urgency. His voice was soft, refined. He straightened and stole a deferential peek at her face. In the dim light, his eyes shone with sincerity. She felt herself starting to like him. Come inside, get out of this nasty night. Surely your business can wait for a moment or two. I don't want to trouble you. Normally I would approach you more properly, but I've received word of a position. I have an opportunity to go to America as a dentist for Seattle's Japanese community. Congratulations, she said with amusement. That is an opportunity, I'm sure. But how am I involved? Even noting Naomi's breathless reaction to the name card, she had no idea. Akira's message, delivered like a formal speech, filled her with maternal amusement. You know how children speak so earnestly, so hurriedly, so endearingly about things that have no importance in an adult's mind. That's how she viewed him, as a child. It was how she viewed Naomi, even though Naomi was 18 and training endlessly in the arts needed to make a good marriage. She had made no effort to find her a husband. Akira blushed. Depending on your response, I may stay in Japan. I've come to ask for Naomi's hand. Suddenly, Chi felt the dampness of the night. Does Naomi know anything of your ambitions? We have an understanding. Please don't judge my candidacy by the unseemliness of this proposal. I ask directly because the use of a go-between takes much time. Either method comes down to the same thing, a matter of parental approval. If you give your consent, I become Naomi's Yoshi. We'll live in the House of Fuji. Without your consent, I must go to America to secure a new home for my bride. Eager to make his point, he'd been looking for full in her face. Abruptly, his voice turned gentle. I see I've startled you. My humble apologies. I'll take no more of your evening. My address is on my card. If you don't wish to contact me, I'll reapproach you in 2 weeks' time. Until then, good night. He bowed and left, taking her ease with effortless grace like a cat making off with a fish. Mother, Chi heard Naomi's low voice and turned from the door. He has asked you? The sight of Naomi's clear eyes, her dark brows, gave Chi strength. Maybe his hopes were preposterous. Where did you meet such a fellow? Imagine. He thinks he can marry the Fuji heir and take her to America all in the snap of his fingers? Chi waited for Naomi's ripe laughter. Naomi was silent. She stood a full half-minute looking straight into Chi's eyes. Finally, she spoke. I met him at my literary meeting. Naomi turned to go back into the house, then stopped. Mother, yes, I mean to have him. All right, now we can get into our answer explanations and tips. Okay. Number 1, which choice best describes what happens in the passage? Okay, tip number 1 I have, make sure we come up with our own answer choice before we look at the answer choices. So what best describes what's happening in the passage? Well, what consists of the passage is we have one character that is asking for the approval from the parents of another character, but this is unexpected because really it sounds like the parents have never met this Aikaira, or maybe have only met him once. So this is really surprising. Also, they're breaking tradition by doing this. Traditionally, there's a go-between, right? So this is really going to be B. One character, switch to a pen here, that's my fault. One character receives a surprising request from another character, right? The character receiving a surprising request is Chi, and the character giving that surprising request is Akira. Right, so we know our answer is going to be B. Answer choice A, one character argues with another character who intrudes her home. That character is not intruding her home. He was invited in, so A is wrong. C, one character reminisces about choices she has made over the years. No character reminisces about choices they made over the years, so C is incorrect. One character criticizes another character for pursuing an unexpected course of action. Key part that makes this wrong is it's too narrow. Okay, if we wanted to pick this, we'd be focusing too much in on right here, where we say, where is it? This right here. Where'd you meet such a fellow? Imagine he thinks he can marry the Fuji heir and take her all to America in the snap of her fingers. Chi waited for Naomi's ripe laughter. Okay, we'd be focusing too much in on that, and we're asked for what happens in the passage. Okay, that's got to be the whole passage, not just that part. So we can get rid of D because that's too narrow. Question 2, which choice best describes the developmental pattern of the passage? All right, well, how is this developed? Well, basically what it is we are just detailing, right, this meaningful encounter between our person asking the mother of the daughter he wants to marry. So it's really just asking for the permission to marry the daughter. Okay. What we're not doing is we're not making a careful analysis of a traditional practice because we aren't carefully analyzing it. So we can get rid of A because of that. B, a detailed depiction of a meaningful encounter. Yes, we are detailing. We have quotes, we have information about them being by a fire with a blanket. So very in detail depiction of this meaningful encounter between this man trying to ask for the hand of marriage from his fiance's parents, right? And then we have C, a definitive response to a series of questions. We don't ever, here's what's wrong with this, a definitive response. We don't ever get a definitive answer, so C is incorrect, right? He says in 2 weeks he will come back to find an answer. A cheerful recounting, this is not cheerful, so we can get rid of D. 3, as used in line 1 and line 65, directly most nearly means, okay, we're going to go to line 1 and line 65, and we're going to come up with our own answer choice before looking at the answers. So let's go to line 1 and then 65. All right, Akira came directly, breaking all tradition. Was that it? Had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between, would she have been more receptive? Okay, so by what I'm getting from directly here is that there is no go-between, right? So there's no mediator. Now I'm going to go down to 65. We have, I ask directly because the use of a go-between takes much time. So once again, he's saying that there's no mediator, no one in between them, no middle person, okay? So that is going to be without mediation. It's not going to be frankly, okay, because frankly isn't really what we're meaning as directly here. The big point of directly in the context of those lines is that he's not going to a person in between, right? He's not going to the mother and having her ask the father, right? So it's not going to be confidently, because we're not really talking about his emotion. In this case, directly is really just talking about there not being a mediator. With precision, that's wrong as well, because once again, we're talking about there not being a mediator. All right, 4, which reaction does Akira fear most from Chi? Well, if we think about the passage as a whole, what he's really afraid of is her thinking it's inappropriate, right? So why does he think that she will think it's inappropriate? And I'm guessing the next question is evidence, and it is, so we can go ahead and find evidence for this as well. Okay, what he's scared of is her thinking that it's inappropriate. And what I have for evidence on that is right here. He says, please don't judge my candidacy by the unseemliness of my proposal. Right, so that's underlined right here. He's afraid that she will think because his asking for her daughter's hand in marriage so sudden and not in the traditional way that they won't think he's serious. So that's what he's afraid of there. Or he thinks it will be inappropriate, right? So our evidence there is going to be 63 to 64, which is answer choice C. B, she'll mistake his earnestness for immaturity. We never touch on immaturity, so we can get rid of B. C, she will consider his unscheduled visit an imposition. No, she invites him in. She's not feeling imposed on. She will underestimate the sincerity of his emotions. Not really, right? The key part here is underestimating the sincerity of his emotions. He's not really worried about her not thinking he's sincere. He's worried about her thinking that he's inappropriate for not taking the traditional route. So we can get rid of D as well. All right, question 6. In the passage, Akira addresses Chi with what? All right, well, once again, this one is one where we kind of have to think big picture. Akira is really addressing Chi with respect, but at the same time, he's saying, no matter what you say, I'm going to marry your daughter, because he says that he will go prepare a home for his new bride if she says no, right? So we know our answer there has to be D, respect, but not utter deference, because he's not utterly deferring. If they say no, he says he's still going to marry her, but he's still respectful in asking for her parents' approval. A, affection, but not genuine love. We really don't see any affection from Akira to Chi. objectivity but not in complete impartiality. This is really an emotional moment, so we can't really describe how he's addressing her with objectivity. And then C, amusement but not mocking disparagement. There's really no amusement with Akira addressing Chi, so we can get rid of that as well. 7, the main purpose of the first paragraph is to what? All right, well, we're going to go to the first paragraph. We're going to come up with our own answer first. Okay, first paragraph, Akira came directly, breaking all tradition. Was that it? Had he followed form? Had he asked his mother to speak to his father, to approach a go-between? Would she have been more receptive? Okay, the key part here is, would she have been more receptive to a different approach? We're analyzing Chi's reaction, okay? We're talking about how she reacted, right? Could she have been more receptive if a different form had been followed? So we're analyzing her reaction. It was not receptive. That's her reaction. Okay, so we get a glimpse at that. We're analyzing her unreceptive reaction. So D will be our answer there. Describing a culture, we're not doing so. Criticizing a tradition, we're not making any judgment good or bad on this tradition, so we can get rid of that. C, questioning a suggestion, we are not questioning anything. There may have been a question mark, but it seems like it was rhetorical, and we're not questioning any suggestion because no suggestion was made. 8, as used in line 2, form was nearly means. Well, we're going to go to line 2, come up with our own answer first. Was that it? Had he followed form? That's going to be tradition or custom, right? Saying had he followed form, another thing, we see that there's a context clue here as well, tradition. So tradition or custom should be our answer there because those are talking about social forms. We see tradition isn't on here, but custom is. Custom will be our answer there. All right, next up we've got 9. Why does Akira say his meeting with Chi is a matter of urgency in line 32? Well, we're going to go to line 32 and figure out why he says it's urgent. Okay, line 32 isn't going to give us our answer, but it's going to tell us right about where it is. He says it's urgent, then he goes on and he says that he would normally do it more properly, but he received word of a position in America. Okay, so we have a job opportunity in America. That's from line 39 to 42. I'm guessing the next question is evidence. That's why I'm noting that. And the next question is evidence. Okay, 39 to 42. Why does he say that his meeting is a matter of urgency? Because he was offered an attractive job in the United States. Okay, so that's going to be our answer there. For C, that one's pretty self-explanatory. I don't really need to tell you why the other ones are wrong because it's just a question of fact. And then we got our answer choice B for our evidence there as well. All right, so now we can move on to passage 2 here. Questions 11 through 21 are based on the following passage and supplementary material. This passage is adapted from Francis J. Flynn and Gabriel S. Adams' Money Can't Buy Love, Asymmetric Beliefs About Gift Price and Feelings of Appreciation. Copyright 2008 by Elsevier, Inc. So I'm going to read through this passage. If you've already read it, you can go ahead and move on to the questions, and I'll give answer explanations there, but I'll go ahead and read it if you have not read it yet. Every day, millions of shoppers hit the stores in full force, both online and on foot, searching frantically for the perfect gift. Last year, Americans spent over $30 billion at retail stores in the month of December alone. Aside from purchasing holiday gifts, most people regularly buy presents for other occasions throughout the year, including weddings, birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, and baby showers. This frequent experience of gift giving can engender ambivalent feelings in gift givers. Many relish the opportunity to buy presents because gift giving offers a powerful means to build stronger bonds with one's closest peers. At the same time, many dread the thought of buying gifts. They worry that their purchases will disappoint rather than delight the intended recipients. Anthropologists describe gift giving as a positive social process serving various political, religious, and psychological functions. Economists, however, offer a less favorable view. According to Waldfogel, 1993, gift giving represents an objective waste of resources. People buy gifts that recipients would not choose to buy on their own, or at least not spend as much money to purchase, a phenomenon referred to as the deadweight loss of Christmas. To wit, givers are likely to spend $100 to purchase a gift that receivers would only spend $80 to buy themselves. This deadweight loss suggests that gift givers are not very good at predicting what gifts others will appreciate. That in itself is not surprising to social psychologists. Research has found that people often struggle to take account of others' perspectives. Their insights are subject to egocentrism, social projection, and multiple attribution errors. What is surprising is that gift givers have considerable experience acting as both gift givers and gift recipients, but nevertheless tend to overspend each time they set out to purchase a meaningful gift. In the present research, we propose a unique psychological explanation for this overspending problem, i.e. that gift givers equate how much they spend with how much recipients will appreciate the gift. The more expensive the gift, the stronger a gift recipient's feelings of appreciation. Although a link between gift price and feelings of appreciation might seem intuitive to gift givers, such an assumption may be unfounded. Indeed, we propose that gift recipients will be less inclined to base their feelings of appreciation on the magnitude of a gift than givers assume. Why do gift givers assume that gift price is closely linked to gift recipients' feelings of appreciation? Perhaps givers believe that bigger, i.e., more expensive gifts convey stronger signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. According to Kammerer, 1998, and others, gift-giving represents a symbolic ritual whereby gift givers attempt to signal their positive attitudes toward their intended recipient and their willingness to invest resources in a better future relationship. In this sense, gift givers may be motivated to spend more money on a gift in order to send a stronger signal to their intended recipient. As for gift recipients, they may not construe smaller and larger gifts as representing smaller and larger signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. The notion of gift givers and gift recipients being unable to account for the other party's perspective seems puzzling because people slip in and out of these roles every day, and in some cases multiple times in the course of the same day. Yet despite the extensive experience that people have as both givers and receivers, they often struggle to transfer information gained from one role, example as a giver, and apply it in another, complementary role, such as a receiver. In theoretical terms, people fail to utilize information about their own preferences and experiences in order to produce more efficient outcomes in their exchange relations. In practical terms, people spend hundreds of dollars each year on gifts, but somehow never learn to calibrate their gift expenditures according to personal insight. All right, so now we can go ahead and get into our questions. So we've got question 11. The author most likely uses the examples in lines 1 through 9 of the passage to highlight what? Well, we're given lines, so we're going to go back to them so we can make sure we get our answer correct, and we're going to come up with our own answer before looking at the answer choices. So we have every day millions of shoppers hit the stores in full force. We talk about how much they spend. We talk about all of the occasions where they're doing gift giving, so really just talking about the multiple, just how much people are buying gifts, right? How frequent we are buying gifts. The frequency with which we are buying gifts. So we've got to highlight what? We've got A, the regularity with which people shop for gifts. Yes, right? We talked about the frequency with which people shop for gifts, and that frequency is high. It was regular, so that's going to be our answer there. We can say that B is incorrect because B says the recent increase in the amount of money spent on gifts. We don't talk about it being recent. We just talk about it being there's a lot of people spending money. We don't talk about changes over time. C, anxiety gift shopping causes for consumers. We don't talk about the anxiety that it causes consumers there. D, the number of special occasions involving gift giving. That would be if we were focusing too much in on that one or two sentences, right? Those lines, it was about 6 through 9 or whatever. We would be focusing too much in on those if we said the number of special occasions, because that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about how often people are buying gifts, not the number of special occasions, but how regular it is that we buy gifts. All right, question 12. In line 10, the word ambivalent most nearly means. So we're going to come up with our own answer choice by looking at where ambivalent is. And I think I said line 12, I meant line 10. So ambivalence here. So we're going to start back here at line 9 to get some context. We have this frequent experience of gift giving can engender ambivalent feelings in gift givers. Many relish the opportunity to buy presents because gift giving offers a powerful means to build stronger bonds with one's closest peers. At the same time, many dread the thought of buying gifts. They worry that their purchases will disappoint rather than delight their intended recipients. All right, so our word was ambivalent there, and we see that we talk about how people like gift giving because it builds stronger relationships, but at the same time, they're worried about it because they know that they're likely to disappoint. So they feel conflicted is the meaning of ambivalent there, right? That's the word that I would come into this looking for, right? And I see that I actually have that word in B. Now let's say I didn't come up with conflicted. Let's say I came up with a different word that wasn't on here. Well, we can say A is incorrect because it doesn't most nearly mean unrealistic, because they do have realistic expectations, but they just aren't, right? Ambivalent in this context was really just talking about how people they're not super excited or super depressed. They are just kind of ambivalent and conflicted, right? They are conflicted because they see the positive thing in that it can build a relationship, but they see the negative in that it's likely to disappoint. So they're conflicted, right? We want to make sure we're reading on past line 10 to get context, because that context helps us see the answer is going to be conflicted. So our answer there is B. All right, 13. The authors indicate that people value gift giving because they feel it. Well, if we remember back from the passage, we remember that they like gift giving because they feel it forms a stronger relationship. So it can serve to strengthen a relationship. And I'll go ahead and show you the evidence for that, since evidence is the next question as well. So if we remember back right around line 10, we say Many relish the opportunity to buy presents because gift giving offers a powerful means to build stronger bonds with one's closest peers, right? So that's giving our explanation for why people like gift giving, because they want to form stronger bonds. That was lines 10 to 13. So we got answer choice A there. All right, 15. The social psychologist mentioned in paragraph 2 would likely describe the deadweight loss phenomenon as what? Well, if we think about what the social psychologists were saying, they were talking about how the deadweight loss phenomenon is predictable because people don't have insight into what other people think, right? So we would call that predictable. We would say A for number 15. We would not say that it's questionable or disturbing or unprecedented, right? There's backing for it psychologically and that people can't be in other people's heads. It's not questionable, it is predictable. The passage indicates that the assumption made by gift givers in lines 41 through 44 may be what? Well, if we think about we're given lines, that means we got to go back to them. So lines 41 to 44, we're indicating the assumption that gift givers have is what? Well, their assumption is gift givers equating how much they spend with how much recipients will appreciate the gift. The more expensive the gift, the stronger their feelings of appreciation. And we are saying that that is incorrect in this article, right? So that's going to be answer choice C. So how do we know that it's saying that it's incorrect? Well, I'm guessing evidence is our next question, and it is. So why are we saying that it's incorrect? Well, we're saying that it's incorrect because if we go back and we look at, let's see what we got here. It's right around line 63, I believe. Okay, so we talk about gift recipients, right? For gift recipients, they may not construe smaller and larger gifts as representing smaller and larger signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. So even though gift givers think the more that they spend, the more that the recipient will appreciate it, we see that that is actually not true, right? As for gift recipients, they don't care if it's larger or smaller. It doesn't affect their signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. So it doesn't affect their appreciation for the gift. So our answer there is going to be 63 to 65. If I can find that. 63 to 65. So that's C. All right, 18. As used in line 54, convey most nearly means. Well, before we look at our answer choices, we're going to go to line 54, select convey, and come up with that most nearly means, right? So we've got, why do gift givers assume the price is closely linked to recipients' feelings of appreciation? Perhaps givers believe that the bigger, more expensive gifts convey stronger signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. Well, right here that means showing, right? Showing stronger, showing or demonstrating stronger signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. So if showing isn't in our answer choices, we're going to find something that means essentially the same thing, right? So I said showing or demonstrating. Doesn't mean exchanging, doesn't mean counteracting, definitely not transport or counteract. Those two are way off base. Exchanging versus communicate, well, we are communicating that, right? We're conveying those feelings of appreciation, which means we are communicating them. We're not exchanging them because we don't know if we're getting anything back. We do know that we are giving them off, though, so that would be communicate. So our answer for 18 is going to be D, communicate. I'll circle that better. Exchange would be if we knew we got something back, which we do not in that context. 19, the authors refer to work by Kammerer and others in line 56 in order to do what? Well, we're going to go to line 56 and figure out why the author is including it. So we see that it says, according to Kammerer 1988 and others, gift-giving represents a symbolic ritual whereby gift givers attempt to signal positive attitudes toward the intended recipient and their willingness to invest resources in a future relationship. So that is really explaining why gift givers assume that their gift price is linked to appreciation, because that price that they're putting out there is investing resources in a future relationship. So that's providing an explanation. So if we go back down, we look at our answer choices, we have offer an explanation, and that'll be our answer there. So that's going to be A for number 19. All right, question 20. The graph following the passage offers evidence that gift givers base their appreciation or base their predictions on how much a gift will be appreciated on. Well, let's go to our graph. We've got our gift givers. We see that the more expensive gift is in this lighter gray, and we see that they predict that the appreciation will be higher, right? Higher for a more expensive gift, more versus less. For this more expensive gift, they believe it'll be appreciated more. So the monetary value of the gift is what they are linking that to. So that's going to be answer choice B, right? Not the appreciation level of the gift recipients, not their own desires for the gift, and not their relationship with the gift. We're only talking about monetary value of the gift there. 21, the authors would likely attribute the differences in gift giver and recipient mean appreciation as represented in the graph to what? What we saw in the graph, I'll go back and show it to you. We see that the recipient actually prefers or appreciates that less expensive gift more than that more expensive gift, whereas the giver expects that the more expensive gift will be appreciated more. So we're asked for the likely attribution of the difference between those two, and that's going to be an inability to shift perspective, right? That giver can't shift perspective to being the recipient, so he can't recognize that the mean appreciation will not be based on monetary value. So that's going to be the answer there. All right, now we can move on to the next passage. All right, let's get started with passage 3. So this passage is adopted from J.D. Watson and F.H.C. Crick, Genetical Implications of the Structure of Deoxyribonucleic Acid, copyright 1953 by Nature Publishing Group. Watson and Crick deduced the structure of DNA using evidence from Rosalind Franklin and R.G. Gosling's X-ray crystallography diagrams of DNA and from Erwin Chargaff's data on the base composition of DNA. The chemical formula of deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, is now well established. The molecule is a very long chain, the backbone of which consists of a regular alternation of sugar and phosphate groups. To each sugar is attached a nitrogenous base, which can be of 4 different types. 2 of the possible bases, adenine and guanine, are purines, and the other 2, thymine and cytosine, are pyrimidines. So far as is known, the sequence of bases along the chain is irregular. The monomer unit, consisting of a phosphate, sugar, and base, is known as a nucleotide. The first feature of our structure, which is of biological interest, is that it consists not of one chain, but of 2. These 2 chains are both coiled around a common fiber axis. It has often been assumed that since there was only one chain in the chemical formula, there would be only one in the structural unit. However, the density taken with the X-ray evidence suggests very strongly that there are 2. The other biologically important feature is the manner in which the 2 chains are held together. This is done by hydrogen bonds between the bases. The bases are joined together in pairs, a single base from one chain being hydrogen bonded to a single base from the other. The important part is that only certain pairs of bases will fit into the structure. One member of a pair must be a purine and the other a pyrimidine in order to bridge between the 2 chains. If a pair consisted of 2 purines, for example, there would not be room for it. We believe that the bases will be present almost entirely in their most probable form. If this is true, the conditions for forming hydrogen bonds are more restrictive, and the only pairs of bases possible are adenine with thymine and guanine with cytosine. Adenine, for example, can occur on either chain, but when it does, its partner on the other chain must always be thymine. The phosphate sugar backbone of our model is completely regular, but any sequence of the pairs of bases can fit into the structure. It follows that in a long molecule, many different permutations are possible, and it therefore seems likely that the precise sequence of bases is the code which carries the genetical information. If the actual order of the bases on one of the pairs of chains were given, one could write down the exact order of the bases on the other one because of the specific pairing. Thus, one chain is, as it were, the complement of the other, and it is this feature which suggests how the deoxyribonucleic acid molecule might duplicate itself. All right, and then we are given a table. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get started with our questions then. All right, so we've got question 22. The authors use the word backbone in lines 3 and 39 to indicate that, well, let's go ahead and take a look of lines 339, the word backbone. All right, what is it indicating? This molecule is a very long chain, the backbone of which consists of a regular alternation, which is a repeating pattern, of sugar and phosphate groups. Okay, so we have a backbone of sugar and phosphate groups that are alternating. Next was line 39. The phosphate sugar backbone. Okay, so once again, this phosphate sugar backbone where they're alternating of our model is completely regular, but any sequence of the pairs of bases can fit in the structure. So our backbone is sugar and phosphate and it's alternating. So let's look at our options. A, only very long chains of DNA can be taken from an organism with a spinal column. No, okay, the backbone here is not referring to a spinal column. B, the main structure of a chain in a DNA molecule is composed of repeating units. Yes, that alternating sugar and phosphate, right, that forms our backbone. C, a chain in a DNA molecule consists entirely of phosphates or of sugars? No, it includes bases. D, nitrogenous bases form the main structural unit of DNA? No. What form the main structural unit of DNA is a combination of nitrogenous bases and sugars and phosphates, right? Or I'm sorry, the main structure of the chain in a DNA molecule is the sugars phosphates, really. All right, so a student claims that nitrogenous bases pair randomly with each other. Which of the following statements in the passage contradicts the student's claims? All right, well, here what we're looking for is where we talk about how pyrimidines must bond with purines. So I remember that was about late 20s, I believe, towards the end of this paragraph right here. We have one member of a pair must be a purine and the other must be a pyrimidine in order to bridge between the 2 chains. So that's going to be 27 to 29 is where I'm looking for my evidence there. Right, we need one pyrimidine and we need one purine. So that's going to be answer choice D. right? Because that shows how they don't pair randomly. You have to have a pyrimidine with a purine. All right, in the second paragraph, lines 12 through 19, what do the authors claim to be a feature of biological interest? Okay, well, let's go to lines 12 through 9 and see what the authors say about a feature being of biological interest. The first feature of our structure, which is of biological interest, so they're really being very direct, is that it consists not of one chain, but of two. Okay, so that's really obvious. That biological interest then is the DNA being two chains. Okay, and that's answer choice D we see. Not the X-ray evidence, not the common fiber use. The chemical formula of DNA is also incorrect. DNA consisting of two chains, it was very direct in saying that's the first feature of biological interest. So 24, it has to be answer choice D. All right, question 25. The author's main purpose of including the information about X-ray evidence and density is to what? Well, let's go take a look about where we talk about X-ray evidence and density and see what the purpose of including that is. So X-ray evidence and density. I remember X-ray evidence and density was somewhere in the sort of the beginning. Let's see where it exactly is, right here. The density taken with the X-ray evidence, this is in lines 18 and 19, suggests very strongly that there are two. Okay, so we're talking about two sugar phosphate backbones, right? Or two chains of DNA. Okay. All right, so this is really providing support for the author's claim about the number of chains of DNA in that molecule. So that's going to be answer choice C for 25, right? They talked about how there were two chains based on that X-ray evidence and density, as I showed you with those lines 18 and 19 up there. As far as A, establishing that DNA is the genic molecule, we didn't talk about that. We were really just talking about the two chains. B, presenting an alternate hypothesis about the composition of a nucleotide, no. And D, confirming the relationship between the density of DNA and the known chemical formula. We don't discuss the chemical formula of DNA there. 26, based on the passage, the author's statement, if a pair consisted of two purines, for example, there would not be room for it, in lines 29 through 30, implies that a pair what? Well, that's going to be any pair of purines would be larger than the space between a sugar and phosphate group. Let's see here. All right, so that is going to be incorrect, right? We're talking about the space implies that a pair of purines would be larger than the space between a sugar and a phosphate group. No. Right? It's not larger than the space between a sugar and a phosphate group. It's larger than the space between those backbones. So that's incorrect. A pair of purines would be larger than a pair consisting of a purine and a pyrimidine. That one right there is going to be correct, right? If we had two purines, then they're not going to fit, right? It talked about how a purine and a pyrimidine, they fit kind of like this, right? One of them fits like that, one of them fits like that. So if we were to have two purines, then we would have it would be too large, we see, because it won't fit into each other, right? So it'd be larger than that pair consisting of a purine and a pyrimidine, right? So that's going to be answer choice B. A pair of pyrimidines would be larger than a pair of purines. We don't discuss the differences between their sizes. And D, consisting of a purine and a pyrimidine, would be larger than a pair of pyrimidines. No, that's false. All right, and then 27, the author's use of the words exact, specific, and complement in lines 47 to 49 in the final paragraph functions mainly to do what? Well, let's go take a look at that. If the actual order of the bases of one pair of chains were given, one could write down the exact order of the bases on the other because of the specific pairing. So this is really stressing that they are complements of each other, the two strands of DNA. All right, those two strands or those two chains of DNA. All right, so it functions mainly to do what? Well, let's take a look at our answer choices. We have A, confirm the nucleotide sequences are known for most molecules of DNA. No, we're really talking about how you can get one strand from the other strand. B, counter the claim that the sequences of pairs can occur in any order. No, sequences of bases along one chain can occur in any order. They just can't along both chains. C, support the claim that the phosphate sugar backbone of the author's model is completely regular. The phosphate, we're not really talking about the phosphate backbone here. We're talking about the in-betweens of those backbones, so what goes in these spaces. Emphasizing how one chain of DNA may serve as a template to be copied during DNA replication, yes, because we're talking about how there is specific pairing between the two, right? Guanines have to pair with cytosines and adenines have to pair with thymines. So based on the table in the passage, which choice gives the correct percentages of the purines in yeast DNA? Well, let's go back and find what our purines are real quick. We see that two of the possible bases, adenine and guanine, are purines. Okay, so adenine and guanine are purines, and our question was asking for the purines in yeast DNA. So adenine and guanine in yeast DNA. We see that that's going to be 31.3 and 18.7. So we got to go find our answers there. 31.3 and 18.7, and that's going to be answer choice C for question 28. All right, question 29. Do the data in the table support the author's proposed pairing of bases in DNA? All right, well, the author's proposed pairing of bases is adenine with thymine, so there should be roughly equal amounts of those, and guanine and cytosine should have roughly equal amounts. I see that that is the pattern, right? We have roughly equal amounts of adenine and thymine, roughly equal amounts of cytosine and guanine. So yes, it does. Okay, so I can get rid of any answer choices with no there, so I can get rid of C and D. So it's going to be yes, because for each organism, the percent of adenine is closest to the percent of thymine, and the percent of guanine is closest to the percent of cytosine. So yes, my answer for 29 then is going to be answer choice A. All right, question 30. According to the table, which of the following pairs of base percentages in sea urchin DNA provides evidence in support of your answer to the previous question? So I'm looking for adenine and guanine being the same, or for thymine and cytosine being the same. I see that these answers are all different, so they can't be correct, and my answer has to be A. And I can go ahead and support that real quick with the sea urchin DNA. Sea urchin DNA, we see we have guanine and our cytosine are both very similar. So that gives us our answer for 50 is going to be, or I'm sorry, 30 is going to be A. 31, based on the table, is the percentage of adenine in each organism's DNA the same, or does it vary, and which statement made by the author is most consistent with the data? Well, we saw that it varies, right? And I'll go back and quick show you that. Let's see. Yep, we see it varies. We see we have on the high end, we have 30s. We also have 32, and we have 29. We have 23.6 as well, so it does vary. All right, now we've got which statement made by the authors is most consistent with that. Well, we see that it varies. And as far as which lines then, so as far as the lines go, let's just go ahead and find where we talk about variance. That's going to be roughly somewhere around right here. So we have the phosphate sugar backbone of our model is completely regular, but any sequence of bases can fit. It follows that in a long molecule, many different permutations are possible, so many different arrangements are possible. Therefore, it seems likely the precise sequence of bases of the code which carries the genetic information. So the key part there is many different permutations are possible. That is supported by the differences in the number of guanines and cytosines. So, or I'm sorry, the difference in thymines and guanines and things like that. Answer there is D, not C. I circled the wrong one. So answer for 31 is going to be D then, and we can move on to our next passage. All right, let's get into questions 32 and 41. So we're going to start with the passage. I'll read through the passage in about 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'm going to get into the questions, answer explanations, and any tips or insights I have for helping you with the SAT reading section. All right, so this passage is adopted from Virginia Woolf, 3 Guineas, copyright 1938 by Harcourt, Inc. Here Woolf considers the situation of women in English society. Close at hand is a bridge over the river Thames, an admirable vantage ground for us to make a survey. The river flows beneath, barges pass, laden with timber, bursting with corn. There on one side are the domes and spires of the city, on the other Westminster and the Houses of Parliament. It is a place to stand on by the hour, dreaming, but not now. Now we are pressed for time. Now we are here to consider the facts. Now we must fix our eyes upon the procession of the sons of educated men. There they go, our brothers who have been educated at public schools and universities, mounting those steps, passing in and out those doors, ascending those pulpits, preaching, teaching, administering justice, practicing medicine, transacting business, making money. It is a solemn sight always, a procession, like a caravanserai crossing a desert. But now, for the past 20 years or so, it is no longer a sight, merely a photograph or fresco scrawled upon the walls of time, at which we can look with merely an aesthetic appreciation. For there, traipsing along at the tail end of the procession, we go ourselves, and that makes a difference. We who have looked so long at the pageant in books, or from a curtained window, watched educated men leaving the house at about 9:30 to go to an office, returning to the house at about 6:30 from an office, need look passively no longer. We too can leave the house, can mount those steps, pass in and out those doors, make money, administer justice. We who now agitate these humble pens may in another century or two speak from a pulpit. Nobody will dare contradict us then. We shall be the mouthpieces of the divine spirit, a solemn thought, is it not? Who can say whether, as time goes on, we may not dress in military uniform, with gold lace on our breasts, swords at our sides, and something like the old family coal scuttle on our heads? Save that venerable object you have was never decorated with plumes of white horsehair. You laugh. Indeed, the shadow of the quiet house still makes those dresses look a little queer. We have worn private clothes so long, but we have not come here to laugh or to talk of fashions, men's and women's. We are here on the bridge to ask ourselves certain questions, and they are very important questions, and we have very little time in which to answer them. The questions we have to ask and to answer about that procession during this moment of transition are so important that they may well change the lives of all men and women forever. For we have to ask ourselves here and now, do we wish to join that procession or don't we? On what terms shall we join that procession? Above all, where is it leading us, the procession of educated men? The moment is short. It may last 5 years, 10 years, or perhaps only a matter of a few months longer. But you will object. You have no time to think. You have your battles to fight, your rent to pay, your bazaars to organize. That excuse shall not serve you. Madam, as you know from your own experience, and there are facts to prove it, the daughters of educated men have always done their thinking from hand to mouth, not under green lamps at study tables in the cloisters of secluded colleges. They have thought while they stirred the pot, while they rocked the cradle. It was thus that they won us the right to our brand new sixpence. It falls to us now to go on thinking, how are we to spend that sixpence? Think we must. Let us think in offices and omnibuses while we are standing in the crowd watching coronations and Lord Mayor's shows. Let us think in the gallery of the House of Commons and the law courts. Let us think at baptisms and marriages and funerals. Let us never cease from thinking, what is the civilization in which we find ourselves? What are these ceremonies and why should we take part in them? What are these professions and why should we make money out of them? Where, in short, is it leading us? The processions of the sons of educated men. All right, let's get into the questions now. The main purpose of the passage is to what? Well, the main purpose of this passage is to stress how urgent the need to consider what women should do with their opportunity is, right? What should they do now that they've gained this opportunity to interact with society in ways that traditionally males have only been allowed to do, right? That's really the big picture of what this question. So this question, it's a big picture question. When we ask about the main purpose of a passage, we need to consider the big picture and not focus in too much on one part of the passage. And the big picture here is that we're stressing the urgency of the issue. We're not emphasizing the value of a tradition, right? We're actually criticizing how traditionally women haven't been involved in these areas. We're not highlighting the severity of social divisions because we're talking about it opening up to women. So we're highlighting how it's opening up and being less divided. We're not questioning the feasibility of an undertaking because we're simply stressing that we need to undertake this. We're not questioning whether it's feasible or not. So D is incorrect. The central claim of the passage, this is also a big picture question, right? The central claim of this passage is that educated women face a decision about how to engage with existing institutions, okay? The whole point of this passage is that women are now in a point where they have the opportunity to engage with these institutions that have traditionally been male, and they need to decide what they want to do with that opportunity. So it's really facing this decision and deciding what they're going to do urgently, right? We have B, women can have positions of influence in English society only if they give up some of their traditional roles. We never say they have to give up some of their traditional roles, so B is incorrect. C, the male monopoly on power in English society has grave and continuing effects. Well, we're talking about continuing effects being lessened, right? We're also not really making an argument about the grave and continuing effects of it, so we can get rid of C. D, the entry of educated women into positions of power traditionally held by men will transform these positions. We don't say that they will transform those positions, so D is incorrect. 34. Wolf uses the word we throughout the passage mainly to, well, whenever we use we throughout a passage and there's only one author, it is likely to establish a sense of solidarity among a group of people, which is answer choice C. We have A, reflect the growing friendliness among a group of people. Well, no one else is talking, so we're not really reflecting any growing friendliness. Advancing the need for candor among a group of people. We're not really advancing any need for candor among a group of people. That question is really kind of one that is kind of a red flag just because of how many big words are in it. Sometimes on the SAT reading section, there'll be a lot of big words, and that at times can just be, if someone is confused, they just pick the one that sounds the most sophisticated because they're not confident, and that's really what I think the trap is here. So we can get rid of B. D, reinforcing the need for respect. Right, if we're saying we, then we don't really need to reinforce the need of respect. We're really just trying to establish that sense of solidarity among women by saying we. All right, 35. According to the passage, Wolf chooses the setting of the bridge because it, well, if we go back up, she actually says it deliberately. She says, we are here, now we are here, right here at that bridge to consider facts. We must fix our eyes upon the procession of the sons of educated men. So they're there to look at the procession of the sons of educated men. So B, it provides a good view of the procession of the sons of educated men. So B will be our answer for 35. It's not conducive to a mood of fanciful reflection, right? Fanciful reflection, they're not reflecting fancifully, they're really looking forward. So they're not really reflecting, they're looking forward to what they must do now. C is within sight of historic episodes to which she alludes. This is unsupported, okay? There's no textual evidence for that being the reason she chose it, and that's the same with D. There's no textual evidence for to support that she chose it for it being symbolic of past and present sons of educated men. So while it may be symbolic of that, it's unsupported by the text, therefore wrong. Same with C. It's unsupported that she chose it because of those sites. All right. Now we've got question 36. Wolf indicates that the procession she describes in the passage what? Well, she indicates that that procession is opening up to women, and I'm going to show you where it says that. If we look here, we say, for there, right, and we're talking about this procession of educated men, traipsing along at the tail end of the procession, we go ourselves, women go ourselves. Women are now being included in this procession. They are now allowed in more positions in society. So that's lines 23 to 24. That's going to give me my evidence to say that this procession has become less exclusionary in its membership in recent years because now women are allowed. C includes all the richest and most powerful men in England. We don't touch on that really. Has become a celebrated feature of English public life. We never said it was a celebrated feature. A has become to have more practical influence in recent years. We don't touch on that either, so we can get rid of A. We already answered 37 with lines 23 to 24. Now we can go ahead and move on to 38. Wolf characterizes the questions in lines 53 to 57 as both what? Well, let's go to those questions. We'll read them and come up with our own answer first, because that usually helps us avoid getting stuck between two. All right, so we want to look at questions or at lines 53 to 57. So we have, for we ask ourselves here and now, do we wish to join the procession or don't we? And on what terms shall we join this procession? Above all, where is it leading us? The procession of educated men, the moment is short. Okay, so what jumps out to me here is that we have to ask ourselves here and now and that the moment is short, right? So these questions are very pressing and they also carry a lot of momentum behind them. They're very important, right? So she's characterizing those questions as momentous and pressing, right? Pressing, I underlined how important that was, and she also characterizes them as momentous because it says that they carry great importance, right? So which choice best gives evidence to this question right here? Well, we need to find one that's supporting both answers, and keep in mind both answers here have to be correct, right? So it's both momentous and pressing. Both answers have to be correct for C to be correct, which they are. So which choice provides the best evidence? We need one that shows that it's both momentous and pressing. I remember back when it talked about how they are very important questions. That shows that they're momentous and that we have very little time in which to answer them. Therefore, they're pressing. So that's going to be 48 to 49 will be my evidence there. So I go down. I see that that's answer choice B for 39. So answer choice B will be my answer for 39. Question 40. Which choice most closely captures the meaning of the figurative sixpence referred to in lines 70 and 71? Well, I want to go back to 70 and 71 and come up with my own answer first. It was thus that they want us the right to our brand new sixpence. It falls on us now to go on thinking, how are we to spend that sixpence? So I'm going to need some more context here. So we have, they thought, women, past, have thought while they stirred the pot, while they rocked the cradle, and it was by thinking at those times that they want us, that opportunity that they have now, it falls on us to think, how are we going to spend this opportunity we have now? Think we must. Okay, so it's really talking about the opportunity that women of past have gotten them by thinking in positions in home and in places where they were traditionally only allowed to think, or to be. The range of places and occasions listed in 72 to 76 mainly serves to emphasize how, what. Well, let's go find those places. We've got 72, let us think in offices and omnibuses while we are standing in the crowd watching coronations and Lord Mayor's shows. Let us think in the House of Commons and the law of courts and baptisms, marriages, and funerals. So look at the diversity with which they have to think, right? They have to think in all of these areas because this problem is so important they need to answer it now, and it's really pervasive. So if they're not thinking all the time in all of these areas, they're going to lose their opportunity, right? So it's talking about how pervasive the issue is and how pervasive the need for them to critically reflect is. So our answer there has to be B, right? It's pervasive, therefore they have to go and do it in these places. All of these places, they need to reflect everywhere because the moment is now and it's very important. Emphasize how novel the challenge women faced is. No, this isn't emphasizing how novel, this is emphasizing its importance, so A is wrong. C, how complex the political and social issues of the day are. All we were listing is places where they need to think. That's not showing how complex political and social issues of that day are. Enjoying the career possibilities women are. No, we don't talk about how enjoyable the career possibilities for women are in this case. We're just talking about the need to reflect and to make decisions and think in all of these areas because this problem is very important and they need to act now. All right, let's get into passage 5, so our last passage. So we have a split up between passage 1 and passage 2 here. So I'm going to read passage 1, answer the questions that are specific to that only. Then I'll read passage 2, answer the questions that are specific to that only. And then finally, the questions that relate to both passages. So let's go ahead and get started with passage 1. Passage 1 is adapted from Michael Slezak, Space Mining, the Next Gold Rush, copyright 2013 by New Scientist. Follow the money and you will end up in space. That's the message from a first-of-its-kind forum on mining beyond Earth. Convened in Sydney by the Australian Centre for Space Engineering Research, the event brought together mining companies, robotics experts, lunar scientists, and government agencies that are all working to make space mining a reality. The forum comes hot on the heels of the 2012 unveiling of 2 private asteroid mining firms. Planetary Resources of Washington says it will launch its first prospecting telescopes in 2 years. While Deep Space Industries of Virginia hopes to be harvesting metals from asteroids by 2020, another commercial venture that sprung up in 2012, Golden Spike of Colorado, will be offering trips to the moon, including to potential lunar miners. Within a few decades, these firms may be meeting earthly demands for precious metals such as platinum and gold and the rare earth elements vital for personal electronics such as yttrium and lanthanum. But like the gold rush pioneers who transformed the western United States, the first space miners won't just enrich themselves, they also hope to build an off-planet economy free from any bonds within Earth, in which the materials extracted and processed from the moon and asteroids are delivered for space-based projects. In this scenario, water mined from other worlds could become the most desired commodity. In the desert, what's worth more, a kilogram of gold or a kilogram of water? Asked Chris Sackney of Honeybee Robotics in New York. Gold is useless. Water will let you live. Water ice from the moon's poles could be sent to astronauts on the International Space Station for drinking or as a radiation shield. Splitting water into oxygen and hydrogen makes spacecraft fuel, so ice-rich asteroids could become interplanetary refueling stations. Companies are eyeing the iron, silicon, and aluminum in lunar soil and asteroids, which could be used in 3D printers to make spare parts or machinery. Others want to turn space dirt into concrete for landing pads, shelters, and roads. All right, let's get into passage 1 then. We got in lines 9 through 17, the author of passage 1 mentions several companies primarily to what? Well, if we look at lines 9 through 17, he's saying that the forum comes on the heels of the 2012 unveiling of 2 private asteroid mining firms. It says they'll be launching their first telescope in 2 years, harvesting metals from asteroids by 2020, talking about trips to the moon for potential lunar miners. So what we're really doing there is we're providing evidence of that growing interest in that space mining, right? We're talking about multiple different mining companies that are interested in space mining, right? Space mining for precious metals and things like that. So those were what all of those examples were. We're not noting any technological advances that are making it possible because we didn't state any. We're not emphasizing large profits because we didn't talk about anything monetary. We're not highlighting the diverse ways to carry out space mining operations because we didn't discuss any diverse ways. So we can get rid of D there. All right, question 43. The author of passage 1 indicates that space mining could have which positive effect? Well, the big thing that he states is that we have materials that are important to Earth's economy that space mining could yield, right? And the next question, I'm assuming, is probably an evidence question, but I'll go ahead and support this answer anyway. And if we were to look up to lines, where is it? Let's see here. Right here. At 18, within a few decades, these firms may be meeting earthly demands for precious metals such as platinum and gold and the rare earth elements vital for personal electronics such as yttrium and lanthanum. So that's from, this is 18 to 23. We're talking about these earth metals that we need for personal electronics such as yttrium and lanthanum, as well as precious metals that we want. So that's where we're really talking about yielding those important materials to Earth's economy. So that's going to be in lines 18 to 22 right there. So 44 is going to be answer choice A. All right, that was what we circled for our evidence for 43, and that's what we're asked for in 44. So as used in line 19, demands most nearly means what? Well, let's go to line 19 and come up with our own answer choice first. All right, so we have, within a few decades, these firms may be meeting the earthly demands for precious metals. So right here, in the scenario, meeting the earthly demands is really meeting the earthly, let's come up with a good one here. Meeting the earthly, let's see, this is a tough one. Within a few decades, these firms may be meeting the earthly demands for precious metals. Really, in this case, I'd say desires is probably a good one for demands there. Desires for precious metals. And we do have that as an answer choice, yep. So that one right there is going to be D. We're really talking about how we want these precious metals and we also want/need these yttrium and these things for personal electronics. So really desires is the best one there. Not claims because no one's making claims to it. Not inquiries because inquiries is really just kind of raising questions or looking into it a little bit, but we're talking about concrete desires here, not offers. These are big time desires. These are desires that we want, things that we demand. So our answer for 45 there is going to be D. All right, question 46. What function does the discussion of water in lines 35 to 40 serve in passage 1? Well, let's go take a look, right? We've got lines 35 to 40, I believe it said. Yep. Okay. So what's our context before it? Well, before it, we talk about how water's mined from other worlds could become the most desired Commodity, because water is worth more than gold in space, right? And in the desert, as an example, gold's useless, water lets you live. Now we're talking about water, ice from the moon's poles could be sent to astronauts on the International Space Station for drinking or as a radiation shield. So we're illustrating that idea that water is more important than gold in space. Splitting water into oxygen and hydrogen makes spacecraft fuel, so ice-rich asteroids could become interplanetary refueling stations. So we're really just illustrating our idea that we stated in this paragraph right here about gold being worth less than water is in space, because water is very necessary and needed in space, and it's scarce in supply. So we're really illustrating that idea that came before it there. So I'm going to see if there's an answer choice that says that. A says it continues an extended comparison that begins in the previous paragraph. No, we're not continuing a comparison. B, it provides an unexpected answer to a question raised. We're not providing any unexpected answer to any question. C, it offers hypothetical examples supporting a claim in the previous paragraph. Yes, we are illustrating or supporting that claim in that previous paragraph by offering up these examples of where water is worth more than gold. So that's really the big idea there in 46 would be C. D, it examines possible outcomes of a proposal put forth. We're not examining outcomes, we're just providing hypothetical examples where water is worth more than gold. 47, the passage 2. All right, so we got to go to passage 2 and read that first. The motivation for deep space travel is shifting from discovery to economics. The past year has seen a flurry of proposals aimed at bringing celestial riches down to Earth. No doubt this will make a few billionaires even wealthier, but we all stand to gain. The mineral bounty and spin-off technologies could enrich us all. But before miners start firing up their rockets, we should pause for thought. At first glance, space mining seems to sidestep most environmental concerns. There is probably no life on asteroids and thus no habitats to trash, but its consequences both here on Earth and in space merit careful consideration. Part of this is about principles. Some will argue that space's magnificent desolation is not ours to despoil, just as they argue that our own planet's poles should remain pristine. Others will suggest that glutting ourselves on space's riches is not an acceptable alternative to developing more sustainable ways of earthly life. History suggests that those will be hard lines to hold, and it may be difficult to persuade the public that such barren environments are worth preserving. After all, they exist in vast abundance, and even fewer people will experience them than have walked through Antarctica's icy landscapes. There's also the emerging off-world economy to consider. The resources that are valuable in orbit and beyond may be very different to those we prize on Earth. Questions of their stewardship have barely been broached, and the relevant legal and regulatory framework is fragmentary, to put it mildly. Space miners, like their earthly counterparts, are often reluctant to engage with such questions. One speaker at last week's Space Mining Forum in Sydney, Australia, concluded with a plea that regulation should be avoided, but miners have much to gain from a broad agreement on the for-profit exploitation of space. Without consensus, claims will be disputed, investments risky, and the gains made insecure. It is in all our best long-term interest to seek one out. All right. The central claim of passage 2 is that space mining has a positive potential, but what? Well, really what we're talking about in passage 2, as far as space mining, is that it has positive potential, but that there are ramifications that we need to consider, right? There are effects that need to be thoughtfully considered before it becomes a reality. So those things include things like public policy, right? How is this going to be regulated? How is this going to be made so that there's property rights in space, right? There's not much laws, it's said. So we're really talking about it has a lot of potential that's good for the world as far as economics go, but we need to really think more about it and thoughtfully consider it before it becomes a reality, because there aren't enough laws on the books for it. A, it will end up encouraging humanity's reckless treatment of the environment. We never say it will encourage that treatment. We say that it's possible, but we're not saying for sure it will. C, such potential may not include replenishing key resources that are disappearing on Earth. No, we say that it's possible that it could include replenishing key resources that are disappearing on Earth. D, experts disagree about the commercial viability of the discoveries it yields. No, experts do not disagree about that. They all agree that it could be very commercially viable. As used in line 68, hold most nearly means what? Well, let's go take a look at what line 68 has to say, and let's come up with our own word for hold. All right, so we've got history suggests that these will be hard lines to hold, and it may be difficult to persuade the public that such barren environments are worth preserving. So right here, I would say maintain is probably the best word if I was to come up with one, right? These will be hard lines to maintain or to hold, right? To keep these lines up, to maintain these lines between developing a space-built economy and having it be sustainable. So that's really what I would say there is maintain for hold. And we see that we do have that as an answer choice. That one right there, 48, is going to be A. B, grip, no, because we're talking about holding or maintaining our lines here. We don't grip a line. Restraining a line, we also don't do that. Withstanding a line, we also don't do that. All right, now we've got 49, which statement best describes the relationship between the passage. All right, well, if we're really to think about the passage, passage 1 is really full force for space explanation. So I'm going to write P1 for passage 1. We are really for space exploration, and we are positive towards it. Now, passage 2, it's positive towards it, but it's reserved, right? We think, okay, this is going to be good for the economy, but there's some problems with it right now, right? So he's kind of reserved about it at the moment. He says that there aren't enough laws on the books to protect property up there and profits, and he says that there's still some things that should be considered environmentally. So he has some reservations about the things argued for in passage 1. So let's take a look at our proposals here. We have A, passage 2 refutes the central claim advanced in passage 1. We're not refuting the claim that it's positive, right? We're agreeing with that. 2, passage 2 illustrates the phenomenon described in more general terms. We're not illustrating a phenomenon described in general terms. Passage 2 argues against the practicality. We're not arguing against the practicality of the proposals. We're just reserved about we're not against the practicality of the proposals. He acknowledges that it can be positive economically. So we're not arguing against the practicality of it, but we're just reserved about the developments, right? We want to take a little bit more time and not rush into things. So our answer there is going to be D. All right, 50. The author of passage 2 would most likely respond to the discussions of the future of space mining in lines 18 to 28, passage 1, by claiming that such a future is what? All right, well, let's go ahead and go back to those lines. So we've got 18 to 28, passage 1. How is passage 2's author going to respond to that? Well, we've got within a few decades, so we're starting right here. These firms may be meeting earthly demands for precious metals such as platinum and gold and the rare earth elements vital for personal electronics such as yttrium and lanthanum. But like the gold rush pioneers who transformed the western United States, the first space miners won't just enrich themselves. They also hope to build an off-planet economy free of any bonds with Earth, in which the materials extracted and processed from the moon and asteroids are delivered for space-based projects. Okay, here's what passage 2 really has to say about that. He's reserved about it, and he thinks that there needs to be more policy involved in it in order to protect the property rights up there and profit and investments, really, is what we're talking about there. I'm guessing next question's evidence if I had to guess for this one, and it is. All right, so we have passage 2 would most likely respond by saying that C is incorrect because he never talks about technologies that do not exist. D seems certain to affect Earth's economy in a negative way. No, he agrees it would benefit it positively. A is inconsistent with the sustainable use of space resources. No, he doesn't argue that it's unsustainable for sure. He doesn't argue for sure that it's unsustainable. And then B will be difficult to bring about in the absence of regulations, and that one will be correct there. He argues for regulations to protect property and profit and investments up there. So which choice is going to give us this one? I believe that sometimes it can be helpful to take a look at words here, and something like insecure jumps out to me. So I'm going to start with 85 to 87, because I'm guessing it talks about property rights and profits being insecure. All right, so we've got without consensus, claims will be disputed, investments risky, and the gains made insecure. Okay, that's really talking about how we need that. That consensus is referring to it's referring to the policy that we need and the rules basically for the space miners. So without that consensus on policy, claims will be disputed, investments risky, and the gains made insecure. So that's 85 to 87. 85 to 87, and that will be my evidence then, because that evidence there is showing how it will be difficult to bring about in the absence of regulations such a future where space mining is really at the forefront of our economy. All right, now we have 52. Which point about the resources that will be highly valued in space is implicit in passage 2 and implicit in passage 1 and explicit in passage 2? Well, in passage 2, we explicitly say that those materials that we mine for or take from space will be different from those in Earth. So 52, really A is going to be our best answer there. What we take from space is going to be different from those resources that are valuable on Earth, right? So for example, we say directly, and I'll go ahead and find it up here real quick. We say there's also an emerging off-world economy to consider. The resources that are valuable in orbit and beyond may be very different from those we prize on Earth. So that's us explicitly stating that those valuable in space will be different from that on Earth. And if we look over here in passage 1, we really just talk about implicitly that water would be maybe more desirable than gold in space. So that's more implicit, whereas in passage 2 we are explicit with that. So that takes us through all of our answers for that 5th passage and for SAT practice test 1. So thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share, and have a good day.